Okay. So thank you very much for your participation. This is our five smart discussion this year. We have already some discussions, as you know, with the Jamal Rose, with the Kay Butterfield, with other people. And today it's an honor for us to have, as we have last 2 years, a very smart discussion, interesting about the digital trends and challenges for the next for this year with two people that I respect and I am very grateful to be here with us. That is Thomas Meyer, one of the most important managers in IDC in global terms, and Gabriel, that is a friend for a long time. He's also a member of our group. He is now responsible for Portugal, Spain, and Italy, and he has been with us. So the idea is that, as usual, we have 2 moments. So I will pass to Gabriel that will make a smart introduction to the event. After we have Thomas that is going to share with us some insight about what's going on in terms of the user for next year. And then we have a discussion with the people that are here. I think we'll have very interesting thoughts about what's going on. So, Gabriel and Thomas, thank you very much for being with us. It's an honor to repeat this smart discussion. I pass now to Gabriel, and then Gabriel introduce the session and passes to Thomas. Thank you very much.
Sure. No, thank you. Thank you, Jaime. It's a great pleasure to be here again. So we were discussing last year also here in the group. So I think this group, our sharing knowledge communities, is very, very important for sharing knowledge, and it's very useful for myself and for sure for everyone. So today we are going to share some of our research, our Futurescape research, but we also and for sure Tom and for sure myself will also learn a lot in the end with the Q&A, with the discussions, with the open conversation with all of you. I think that's the most important. It will be for sure the most important part. But let me just explain a little bit what is our Futurescape. So basically, IDC publishes every year a set of research, dozens of research around the predictions. So what are the top predictions we see for the year and for the short and medium term? And we do it every year in the end of the year, and then we publish it and present it during the beginning of the year. So we are going to do it here in Portugal in February 13 in Centro Cultural de Belém. So I will be sharing here in the group invitation for all of you. Tom will be here with us, so we'll have other IDC analysts who will be presenting, and Tom will be opening the event and also having a discussion with myself and with Bruno about the trends and how we see the Portuguese market evolving with these trends. We at IDC, so we are a market research company, so we are more than 1,300 analysts, and they don't have a crystal ball, but they talk with all the ecosystems, with all the industries, so the main IT players, with startups, with regulators, with governments, with all the participants of this digital and IT and AI ecosystem, and then they publish what they think will be the key topics that will shape the industry in the next year. So today we are going to share these. This research is used by decision makers to have information, to have data, to define their strategies and define their investments in IT. And as you already told, Jaime, so Tom is our research VP for Europe, so he's managing all the analysts that are covering Europe, and he'll be sharing with us a sneak peek of what we are going to share in February. That is, what are from all these predictions, what are the key topics that we think are most important for European organizations and especially for Portuguese organizations. So With this, let me hand over to Tom, and then, of course, I will do a few comments about the Portuguese market, and then we have the discussion. So, Tom, thank you, and thank you all of us, and please go ahead, Tom.
Well, thank you very much. Hopefully, you can see this full screen. Thank you very much
Yes.
for having me here. It's a great pleasure. Always love coming to Portugal as well, and the conversations that we tend to have are superb, wonderful, very insightful. There's a lot of innovation going on in Portugal. In fact, one of the CIOs that I used to deal with a while back, CIO of Asahi, the beer brewer. He actually changed organizations. He now works for Harvey, and he's based out of Lisbon now, Cascais. And he very purposely wanted to move to Portugal and take this role as well. And they have now built a hub, one of three globally, in Lisbon. It's funky and it's fresh and it's young. So very cool to see that. And if you don't know about Harvey, they do all the logistics and pricing for McDonald's for all the food parts. So certainly critical organization. So the way, maybe just in terms of my position, so I'm based just outside Munich. It is freezing cold here at the moment. One of the other reasons why I'm definitely looking forward to coming to Lisbon in the hope of some better climate. And as Gabriel said, we've got a big team globally. We align globally as well in terms of the big narratives and the big things that are coming towards us. And the glimpse I'll show you today, just keep in mind that we're doing this for all of the different areas as well. So for infrastructure and networking, and obviously in the AI field, there are multiple areas there as well. So it's a big movement. But perhaps, to start with, we looked at for our Futurescape this year and what it means to be a sustainable AI-fueled business. And Jaime, you already said, what does this mean in terms of digital? I mean, for us, the AI part is really fueling the next wave of digital transformation yet again. But things will be very different as we move along. And hopefully I can give you a flavor of that in terms of where we are. Can't move my slides, which isn't helpful. Bear with me. So when we looked at, let me just go back. So one of the other things that we very much like to do, and feel free to utilize that obviously as well, follow us via the different media. If you're happy to quote something or you've got an interesting thought, use the hashtag IDC Predictions 25, and hopefully we can keep the conversation going not just here, but also online. Now, just thinking back about what we saw over the last 12 months, we had a little bit of a different sense, if you want. So from a CEO perspective, the word of the year was growth, followed by trust and productivity. And it was very much around how do we leverage AI to connect better with our customers, improve our supply chain, make our employees more effective and efficient. How do we change some of the processes? And from a CIO perspective, it was much more around efficiency, productivity, transformation. So very much trying to move the whole IT ship along to be able to reap the rewards as well. So needless to say, you might have seen it or experienced it yourself, a lot of investments that have been made, and I just qualify in a second where we are. But the expectations on IT were very much around driving a tighter ship, cost ship, but also obviously then include and manage all the innovations that were coming, often from the business units as well. Interestingly enough, for the CIO community, the conversations that we've had with a number of CIOs in the last couple of weeks have been very much around the word of the year is efficiency, transformation, and very much around cost as well. And keep in mind that there's a difference at the moment between where the south of Europe is, and you might have seen the articles in economic terms, versus the north of Europe. So the south of Europe is doing very well. North of Europe, including Germany as well, struggling a lot in terms of where they are. So when we then revisited our predictions for last year, we very much focused, and I'm just showing you three here, on what's happening in terms of C-suite collaboration, then Gen AI powered process automation and AI spending driving digital budgets. Now, I would say what we still see is that in terms of the C-suite collaboration, it hasn't moved as quickly. So when we look at our predictions from last year and we give them a red, yellow, green, that's probably red still, or maybe yellow, because the coordination of the C-suite to then decide on the use cases and the strategy hasn't moved quite as quickly. In terms of process automation, there's definitely still a lot to do. And if you look at what's been proposed generally, is that with Gen AI you can increase productivity by 25%, 50%. Most organizations are struggling with that because adoption of Gen AI and generally AI tools in organizations requires change management, and most organizations and process management and change management, and that hasn't happened. So a lot of tools were just thrown across. You get a whole host of co-pilots from Microsoft, or you get ChatGPT, you get a maybe corporate version. But the automatic translation into productivity is definitely not the case. What has happened is that a lot of money has been spent on digital budgets. So that's definitely something that we have seen. Now, when we look at this in terms of overall spending, what we've seen now for the last 13 years or so is that it's the GDP part that was always quite aligned with IT spending. That gap has actually widened over time. And when you look particularly from 2016 onwards, you see that quite clearly. Corona was one element. And as we came out of Corona, where there was a lot of investment, remote work and what have you, that spending hasn't really gone away. A little dip in 23, straight after Corona, but then now with the next wave of AI investments, but also refreshers. So there's a lot of technical debt still in organizations. We had a conversation with a couple of CIOs last week around SAP modernization. So where do they go next? There's still a lot that needs to be done outside of AI, but keeping AI in mind in terms of modernizing the applications, for example, as well as infrastructure networking across the board. And that's really translated in what you can see here, the 23, 24 growth. And then on the left-hand side, on the right-hand side, you see the forecasted growth for next year. And really across the board, when you look at PCs, server storage, software, and IaaS, you saw a lot of investments between 23 and 24. From a worldwide perspective, actually, if you look at server growth in particular and storage growth, has been absolutely tremendous. And we see this continuing partially. So IaaS, infrastructure as a service, particularly the move to cloud, will continue. It's not as clear-cut as to say everything will be public cloud. As you probably, again, would have seen or experienced as well, it's a lot more focused now at what do I need? And there are some organizations that are taking a very deliberate stance where they say, we want to go to public cloud. Certainly here in Germany, Deutsche Bank, they had a massive project and moved everything, most of it into the public cloud. But then you see other organizations that are taking more of a hybrid approach, and they are making decisions now, particularly with AI. Where does it sit? Who can I work with? Does my data, do I retain my data? Am I within the legal framework? So you mentioned regulation early on has become a significant talking point. And 2025 is definitely the year of regulations and implementing regulations as well, from ESG, so environmental and social governance, to further security, ethics with AI. The AI EU Act, for example, is one of them. Anyway, it means that we're seeing actually reasonably good growth across the board next year as well. Particularly IS software, tablets are coming back. So storage not quite so strong, but still based on last year, still moving very nicely. And networking is going up again as well, which, by the way, is one of the main areas where organizations are now struggling, either for their site, their branch, but also countries are struggling in terms of the build out and having seamless network. So that's one part. So what about AI? So it is clear that AI will continue to grow. I mean, we see this. And if you're looking at some of the long-term forecasts, we're talking about some very significant numbers. But even in the short term, we expect investments to continue. I qualify this in a second when I talk about some of the other pieces. But think about it, particularly in retail, banking, and other areas. There's a lot of focus around using AI, and this is not just, and I should point this out, not just generative AI. Generative AI is 16%. The other parts are, for example, predictive AI as well. That's being used. But thinking about supply chain again as well, getting more accuracy, automating processes, proximity to the customer, loyalty programs, more direct marketing, and then you have all these other use cases around translations. A lot of use of GenAI in legal now. So those are some of the things to consider. We talked about regulation already. That's clear that that's happening now. And there's a massive startup ecosystem. We're expecting a lot more to happen. We're also expecting some consolidation. But this is a real opportunity for Europe to differentiate as well going forward. I won't talk so much about the meta piece, but just suffice to say, it's a little bit lower in adoption. Lots of sovereignty initiatives there as well. And they're investing humongous amounts in data centers at this juncture, much faster than Europe is at this point. So AI is growing. That's clear. I don't think you need convincing for that. One of the things I also wanted to mention is we do an AI economic impact study. We've got this at global level, regional level, and we can also obviously do this for countries. But the key thing is that the impact on Europe or in this case, EMEA as a whole, we expect to be about 5 trillion. And that's about a quarter of the global impact of $20 trillion by 2030. So that's a cumulative impact. So you add, year 25 impact plus 26 plus 27, etc. So cumulative impact. And then one is the solutions that are being offered, but then also supply chain. So think about chip providers, software that's being done, but then also think about the government stimulus that's being utilized as well. And that means also that when we then look at what's being spent on AI solutions and services, will generate $4.6 in the economy, which is super interesting, I find, especially with the conversation about what's the impact on jobs and what have you. But we'll get to that later. One of the areas, though, that I think everyone has noticed is that there's a certain disillusionment happening. So on average, we did a massive survey, a global survey, and this is for EMEA in particular. There are 40 proof of concepts around AI, particularly Gen AI in this case, in organizations. When we actually did another survey, and we did this by department, the number actually seems to be even higher, about 80. The point really is, though, 40 or 80, there's a lot going on. Only 5 of them go into production usually. And of those, only 3 tend to be successful. So the success rate in terms of the metrics that you agree for a Gen AI investment, tend to not prove out, which is why a lot of companies are struggling with how much they're going to invest now. And this raises questions around, when do I jump into it properly? What do I invest in? How do I select? And a key thing, or the key things that are hampering these initiatives are around, as I mentioned, costs and ROI, being really clear about your objectives, not having the right skills on tap. The coordination in the C-suite, I already mentioned in terms of our prediction from last year, that's still the case. So you see that as a proof point. There is very poor in a lot of organizations. Then is the use cases. Are we actually, describing them right? Is the scope correct? Do we have the right metrics that we use as well to measure success? And then, do I actually have the right infrastructure in place to be able to serve the users of the initiatives that I'm doing? So the way we look at this is that, over the last couple of years, we've been in this Gen AI scramble. Usually AI initiatives were loosely coordinated, maybe at best, often single business units went out. It's a little bit like the cloud era when organizations went out with their credit card. The marketing department bought some cloud capability because they were running a particular campaign, and it wasn't necessarily very well coordinated. And what we've done is we looked at 7 elements that we think are critical to get this done. And you see these different, AI platform, data, the strategy, the people, what have you. And as we go across the next few years, we think that, for 2025, for example, there'll be a lot more coordination around these different elements, particularly strategy and governance right at the top, and as well as the people aspect. At the same time, we also see in the if you want, the technology part of this, AI platform, applications, data infrastructure, a lot more coordination coming together. And then as we look ahead, what is what we call the AI-fueled business, where this is basically aligned. AI is effectively in everything. It's a bit like digital is in everything, or the internet is in everything. So it's an aligned strategy. There's agreement, and obviously much advance being made on use cases. So we're entering that next period. And we're not going to talk about it much today, but that also mirrors partly this agentic AI approach, where you have these agents running over certain applications. You might even have an AI orchestrator agent who orchestrates, or which orchestrates other agents. But that's sort of like the timeline we see. So figure out where the barriers are, try to get coordinated, build that strategy, figure out what you need in terms of particularly your data as a critical part of this, and then start coordinating around this. Because without the data, you can build all you want, but that's a very critical piece. So we've got data planes that we describe. There are 4 of them, and certainly when we're in Portugal, we'll go through that. So the other part of it is, and I think this is a real big differentiator for Europe as well, that there's a strong belief that whatever we do next in terms of that journey, it needs to be responsible. And good to see that's nearly 100%. So it'd be interesting to see who said, we shouldn't look for responsible AI, but it's a critical point for organizations. And it sort of has 2 aspects to it. One is making sure that whatever I'm building in AI is ethical, it can be proven, is based on fact, is based on data, doesn't get meddled with, it's secure. So, hence the question around where do I put the data, as well as the AI initiatives, in my own data center, in the cloud. Do I buy maybe from cloud vendors ready-made AI solutions, or do I build my own, which is superbly costly? But the other part is also around sustainability. And you would have seen the news around, particularly some of the investment in nuclear energy by the hyperscalers, so Google and Amazon, for example. But that's really critical. And we talked to one head of sustainability, for a really large German-based but international organization. And he sees it both ways. He says, look, there's so much energy that's being consumed on the one hand through AI, but through IT increasingly, but through AI more specifically. And you see all the kilowatts and whatever that are being quoted for running a query and in ChatGPT versus, I don't know, Google search, for example. So, I mean, there's definitely pressure on that. But he says also they're looking at utilizing AI to make sure that they can actually both measure and also impact their sustainability, so they make some of the right choices. So better data, better decisions that will also help keep the envelope somewhat a little bit smaller. So we've got this two-sided story, and it's actually quite, I guess, refreshing to see that that most think that AI for sustainability will actually help. And they're using AI to guide them on their sustainability journey. But at the same time, it does have this challenge underneath it as well, in terms of saying, well, it's clearly going to use a lot more energy. And now this has a cost impact, it has an environmental impact. So how do I deal with it? But it's very unique, particularly in Europe, that we see the focus on that. So I'll stop here in a second. The way we look at it is, okay, so how can we help organizations through this? And think about some of the key attributes that are critical when thinking about the AI-fueled digital business. And I already mentioned that it's got to be value-focused, value-driven. A lot of CIOs have burned a lot of money. And we talked to one CIO more recently, in fact, just before Christmas. And you might know the company Beiersdorf. They do Nivea, the creams and other things. And the way she described it was, well, we don't really have so much money for AI initiatives. So what we're going to do is when we have IT initiatives or business-driven initiatives, we will dock AI on where it makes sense and explore that. But standing up independent initiatives around AI, she does not see for next year. So we've got a bit of a mixed picture, but there's a pressure there, particularly now with agents upon us. So it's about value, and then it's about the human very clearly. It's about trust, being responsible. But then we also have the technology aspects there. It's got to be data-driven, which means I also need to have the data available, and then platform-enabled, which means that I can coordinate across various platforms. And we're actually thinking about the advent of, or at least the drive towards a unified platform going forward. So let me stop here for a moment and just look.
Yes, I think it's okay. Gabriel, do you want to make any comment beside Thomas' presentation, or do you want that we go to the discussion with the people that are here?
Yeah, let me just add some comments about Portugal.
Okay.
And I think Thomas also he has two slides just to finish that are more long-term view of the market. So what we are seeing, and Tom is shared today, is that we have these 5 opportunities and challenges to really build companies and prepare them for this AI-led era. And in Portugal, just to highlight that the trends are the same, but of course there are different ways you can look to these trends. And traditionally at IDC, we have been looking to how much companies and consumers are spending on IT.
Yes.
And of course, we are seeing that it will grow. It will grow more than the economy, as Tom shared, especially in the government sector. So we have a huge amount of money from Europe, for the PRR, that are really impacting how governments are investing in IT, but other sectors are still growing more than the economy, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8%. The government are investing more than 10%, and consumer are spending 3, 4, 5% in the next years. So it will continue to grow more than the economy. But I think there are two aspects of the Portuguese market that are very important and are every year are more important for Portugal and for our economy. One is the digital and IT services exports. So we have been working with ICEP, is the agency responsible for exports and investments in Portugal. And basically we did a study that we saw that IT services exports represents around 5,000 million euros in Portugal. So it's 4 or 5 times the size of the Portuguese market. So we are now exporting a lot of services, so it's having a big impact in our market. Of course, one of the big importers are Germany, Tom,
Yes.
and France. So a lot of challenges there, but there are also a lot of business centers coming to Portugal. So Tom mentioned Javi, for example, coming to Portugal, and we did this market research for ICEP. We quantified 250 business centers, big business centers that are coming to Portugal to export these services to other countries. So this is a very important segment of the market that will continue to grow and will generate a lot of opportunities for all. And then we have what we call the digital and IT products exports, but basically based on the startups and scale-ups and other unicorns that we already have in our market. So we see a lot of companies building, not only exporting services, but building products, digital products. We do also a market research for Startup Portugal. And we see that today, so we have around 4,000 startups in Portugal, and we are adding around 400 to 500 new startups in Portugal. And as Tom was mentioning, it will be key to be competitive in the future, to have these startups in this AI era. So we see a lot of them. So we have, of course, a lot of unicorns with at least a Portuguese ADN, right? We have 6, 7, depending on how you count. But it's really an ecosystem that is growing and will really grow. And it will grow, especially based on these new investments coming from AI. So just to finish and to start our Q&A, Tom, do you want just to share the 2 slides just to, besides this short, medium-term view of how we are seeing companies and markets changing? Do you want to share these 2 slides and then we go direct to the Q&A?
Yes, of course. Yes, of course.
Okay, super. So hopefully you can see this again now. So this is sort of like the framework where we say, okay, we need to focus on these areas. They are critical. So bear with me. And what we did was, based on this, then come up with a number of predictions. And you're missing a little bit of the middle story. We lead into this a little bit, and you see this in next month in Portugal as well. But maybe just to describe it shortly, I don't want to kill too much time, but there are 7 aspects we pulled out. So one is really around, so the first one is around how do you reduce ROI and time to product and conversion. And we think this is going to be through cross-functional AI applications. So you're going to have very specific ones that are, for one particular finance process, but think about multiple processes being impacted at the same time by having these cross-functional AI applications. So that's one thing. It's really around, how do you actually start getting some order into this as well? As you go more digital, think about what you need to do in terms of platforms and how you can scale them, but then also how do you drive growth from that? So we think there's going to be a big shift towards looking at unified AI platforms, as I mentioned before. The other part is how do you actually, reduce those costs? Because this whole AI thing is costly. And you see a lot of companies, just as I said, it's a co-pilot phase, so you buy packaged applications, packaged solutions. A lot of people are looking at inferencing, which is still quite expensive. Very few people are looking at building their own LLMs, so their own large language models, which is super expensive. And then you have quite a few that are just looking at composing effectively. So you're using something off the shelf, putting their own data in it. We think that organizations are increasingly going to use synthetic data to train AI models because it's a lot cheaper. You can train the bias out, so there are a set of benefits there as well. There are also a set of downsides, don't get me wrong. But we think that's going to happen. We do hope there'll be some move towards the trust score, so that you can be audited like you can as an organization in other areas as well. So it's a lot easier for people to understand how trustworthy you are. Now, we talked to some CISOs about this as well, so chief information officers. They think it's a bit further out. It's clear. But we hope that's going that way. Talked about agents and agent orchestrators already, but we do think it'll take a little longer than people are expecting. But by 2028, we'll see this impact. So this is prediction 5, where agents and agents orchestrators will be quite pervasive. And then the last ones are really around the jobs and skills. So we hope, number 7, a lot more continuous learning. And we hope that this will also enable a whole new lot of new job roles. And we often talk about job losses that we might face, but at the same time, we believe that there's going to be a significant impact in terms of being able to learn and grow with AI. Now, I won't go through this now, but maybe just to keep in mind, there's a whole lot of other stuff going out there as well. Space tech is super interesting. Quantum's coming towards us. It gets moved out every time, but we're now at another decade before we see it more mainstream. But we're hoping that all of these different things will obviously have an impact. But think about the geopolitical order that we see coming up now, digital regulations, and then the different technologies that are being impacted. All right, with that,
Yes, okay. I think that's perfect, Gabriel. I think that we can start now, if you agree, with some discussion. It's one of the main points for smart discussion. We have here some people that are involved in IT and digital. I think that we can start with Luis Neves, that is the general manager of the JASI, that is a global institution that involves the main telecommunication companies from Asia, US, and Europe. And I think he has some questions and topics to comment on Thomas and Gabriel ideas. Luis, do you want to make some comments, some questions to Gabriel and to Thomas? And thank you very much for being here. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Jaime, and thank you to Gabriel and Thomas as well. Well, let's say my first comment may be a little bit critical. I saw very little from sustainability in this presentation. I was very curious about the titles, creating a sustainable AI. So I think the word sustainability probably has many different connotations, and therefore, this is my critical remark. Very little about sustainability, and that leads me to my fundamental question, which was something that Thomas you presented on your slides. One thing from your research says that 91% of companies they are investing on AI for sustainability. I was curious about that statement. Could you give me 2 or 3 examples about that conclusion? And I will finalize with something maybe more disruptive. I think there is no secret that any country that will not be investing on digital infrastructure in the ICT or AI will be dead. So all those figures of the billions, trillions, and so on, we all know that if those numbers do not come forward, countries will be left behind. There are many reasons for countries and regions like Europe really to step up. Otherwise, they will be in a very difficult situation. There are security reasons about that. There are, of course, economical reasons, competitiveness reasons, and of course, sustainability is a very important aspect in our research. And just as a piece of information, we are about to start a 2-year project on AI for sustainability that is covering the enabling impact of AI. So we are looking at how we will be living in the future from all the different perspectives. So we're talking about how do we feed, how do we live, how do we educate, and so on and so on. The second piece of the work, which I think it's fundamental, it's about the digital infrastructure component, because we know that to power AI, and Thomas, you mentioned about companies like Google, Microsoft now investing on supporting their infrastructure through nuclear power. So those companies actually they have abandoned their sustainability targets and climate targets, just to be clear. So that raises also the question about how sustainable is nuclear energy. I will not jump into that conversation because, of course, there are different perspectives. I have my own. But what we are seeing is that the digital world is not really walking the talk in terms of their sustainability commitments. And so in our organization, we have the biggest players, companies like Kyndryl, Google, Microsoft, you name it. And what we are seeing is that we are facing that conversation and the challenges relating with how the companies have been communicating their sustainability targets, and now they are at odds because, in fact, they are no longer in a position to confirm those targets. And so I think we need to have a more serious conversation around that. And finally, the governance component is very tricky because we have the AI Act in Europe, but if we look around the world, what do we have in terms of governance? So we need a global governance on AI that needs to be in place. I think there is a role for the private sector to drive that conversation. That's one of the parts that we are thinking about dealing in our research or in our work for the upcoming 2 years. So I think we have not yet seen anything when it comes to AI and Gen AI. We are at a very early stage. I think whatever numbers we can, pull here, they are very attractive, of course, from a business standpoint, and they will trigger a lot of interest from startups to big companies and to governments. But I think we need to go back a little bit to, Yuval Harari, and, the concerns that he's raising about where are we going as a planet, as a world. So if we are thinking about human-centric perspective, we really need to deepen into that conversation to see how all of this really fits at a global scale. But I will finalize with my question. Give me 2 or 3 examples of those 91% that are investing on sustainable AI. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. We have here, I think, that Joyce, that was a former director in global terms of Microsoft. Joyce, do you want to make a comment, a question, please?
Yes, thank you very much. Hello, Thomas. Hello, Gabriel. Hello, all people. No, it's very short. My question. So it's if we assume that hyperscalers will have I would say, a dominant role for AI deployment, and all these new hyperscalers are basically US-based companies. And because we know that there will be a new elected US president, and the tariffs conversation, it is all over, can we expect, being Europeans, any challenge dealing with hyperscalers in this new era? Thank you.
Okay. And a third question, we usually have groups of 3 questions or topics. And Paulo Reis, you are the startup entrepreneur and someone that deals with all these topics. Do you want to make some questions or topics to Thomas or Gabriel, please?
Yeah, I have a very concrete question around how to stimulate the move into AI. There's no question around the need and the benefits, but can you recommend any kind of framework exactly to evaluate how companies should navigate to justify their going into these emerging technologies? Thank you.
Okay. So Thomas and Gabriel, I don't know. Do we prefer Gabriel to make some comments and then to pass to Thomas? Please, you are at your disposition. Please.
Yeah, no, I will.
Yes.
I
Okay.
will,
You are the orchestrated. Okay.
let Tom starts because we'll give him the most difficult
Yeah.
part of the talent, then I can comment.
Okay. Thank you.
I have to say, I haven't even looked at the chat yet, so I'm my head's smoking just listening to you. Great questions. Thank you very much for those. So, Luz, maybe starting with this. I mean, we see the legal environment requirements are still pushing for companies to get their head around sustainability to keep on driving this. I completely agree that companies have thrown out a lot of them, companies of all types, their goals, right? I mean, we see those moving out. But we don't think, particularly in Europe, that this is going to really hold back the development towards that. We've got a team looking at this, happy to follow up to get a little bit more into discussion. Would also be really interesting to understand what your sustainability initiative now looks like that you're just kicking off and putting it into action as well. I think that's one. We did play on the sustainability title. We do see a lot of AI being used, though. I mean, they're all trying to answer those questions through AI. So I think that is definitely one of the big use cases. And just to say, competitiveness is a major issue in this. Europe's been the slow dog for a while. Now, I think actually the regulations that are coming in are potentially helping us with humanity, with sustainability, and with trust as well. The hope is that more of the global economies will lean towards taking what are the hardest and most rigid regulations, similar to what we've seen with GDPR. But the votes out, in all honesty. Hyperscalers is potentially a challenge. Although, if you look at how they've invested and the offerings that are available in most regions now that are effectively independent from the Cloud Act in the US, so the data continues to belong to you. Often, data centers there are data centers in the region, and they're often delivered with partners. So. I think so if you look at Stackit, for example, they come out of a retail organization in Germany. They will work with them to deliver particularly their workspace kind of solutions. So you see more local players being involved there. So I think that's one thing to consider. What I can't tell you, and if I knew, then I'd probably be buying a lot more shares as well, whether anything's going to change from a tariff, trade, and legal environment going forward. But based on where we are at the moment, you would argue that's probably not the case. And maybe just Anna Paula, just to get to you as well, we have if you want, a piece of research and a model that looks at each function. So marketing, finance, HR, and all of those, and then the different use cases within that function. And then we basically have a template that you can fill out as an organization if you want to say, okay, this is the use. And in fact, we've got it, and you can compare yourself against it. This is the use case. How difficult is it? How complex? How risky is it to do that? What resources do I need? How much do I need to put in it? But also, what are the expected metrics out of this? And we basically have this template. You can compare yourself as well. We certainly can follow up with more information. That's been really useful. It's a sort of like the AI adoption survey that we did for use cases. We also have a maturity model coming up.
Okay. So we have here with us. Yes,
Let me
Gabriel, do you
just
want to
add,
make some
yeah, let me
comments?
just add
Yes.
one comment. Yeah,
Yes, of course.
so we don't have too much time, but
No problem. Yes, we are here
coming
to
to
discuss.
your first comment. So I love Yuval Harari. So I just read the last book, the Nexus, and I also agree that
Yes.
there are a lot of
It's a very good
risky.
book. A very good book. Yes, Gabriel.
Yeah,
Yes.
no, I read almost all of them. But
Yes.
the fact is that you told that we need to step back and try to think how we are going to deal. But I don't believe we have time to step back, right? Because we have all these big players, especially in US, and you see, of course, from China, and they are moving so fast that what we need really to do is to create conditions to have companies, startups in the beginning, but to have big companies in Europe that can compete. And there are a lot of so we can unpack a little bit how we can do it. So a lot have been discussed how we can turn our European ecosystems for startups more competitive, and I think we are now. But the problem is that we also need to have capacity to keep the startups in Europe, because then we build these some AI startups, some startups in the energy sector, in the bio tech sector, but then US companies buy then when they are really in the good points, and we don't have then so we have the foundations to build them, but then we don't have the investment ecosystems to keep them in Europe, right? So there are a lot of issues there, but what my opinion is that we need to really be able to have these companies. Regulations are important, but we need to think
Okay.
more about the companies and not about the regulation, in my opinion.
Thank you very much. We have here the former governor of the Portuguese Bank, Portugal, Carlos Costa. But before we have also Carlos Oliveira that has the question. So I will pass to Carlos Oliveira and then
All right.
Carlos Costa. And then to Carlos Costa, it was a pleasure to have you with us. Please, Carlos.
Thank you,
Thank
John.
you very much. Okay.
Hello, everybody. Thanks, Gabriel and Thomas. Excellent presentation. My questions are very much on your presentations on on two things. One is looking into Europe and could also be focused in Germany. What kind of sectors will be there will be more opportunities and pressures? Is mobile, finance, pharma, health? I didn't see that there. Could be interesting. And also where the major investments and transformations will be in large companies, in SMEs. Will SMEs be playing here, or are they too small and it's too much of a challenge? So that's one question. Sectors and type of companies. The second question is, how have you seen that the procurement of AI has been done until now, and how it will evolve? C-suite, directors, or very much piggybacking on the other projects? I don't know if you have info on that. Could be interesting to know. Thank you.
Okay. Dr. Carlos Costa, do you want to make any comment, please? It's a pleasure.
Thank you very much. I'm listening to you as a user, not as a producer or observer or watcher. But I have two questions. First question, or this has two issues. The first issue is how to take part of this revolution as a producer is one thing. The other thing is how to take part of this revolution as a user.
Yes.
One of the main points that for me is important is to understand that AI brings a big challenge to companies. This is to think about the way they are working, the process, and to re-engineer the process that they use. And this means that they need to think what is the role of the human force inside their production process. And in what concerns Europe, I think that we have a big challenge is the fact that it's very difficult to make the re-engineering of the process with the present I will say, legal framework in what concerns the working conditions.
Yes.
And we need to think about what is necessary to do first in order to convince companies and the public administration that they need to look carefully to their processes in order to understand what is routine, what is human dependent, what is the role of the humans in this process, and after to assign these roles in a different way. Because if you put IT within the organization without revising the process, the increase in productivity will be not necessarily very high. Second, you will stay with the same people doing things I will say, with a lot more technology. And we need to think about that in order to make this big step forward in what concerns the production conditions to make it useful. And for me, one of the main obstacles will be first mentality, the mindset of workers, mindset of human that they are inside the organizations. Second, the legal framework that is framing the integration of the human factor within the organization. This is the second leg of the process because the first leg is the contribution for the production of these new tools, because we are speaking about the tools and we are speaking about the introduction of these tools in the working process and in production, namely in manufacturing and namely in the public administration. But I'm out of this process. I'm, as a watcher, trying to understand what is going on. Thank you very much.
Okay. So, Thomas and Gabriel, you have here already some topics to discuss. And I propose that we have, after a final set of questions, and we conclude, okay? Gabriel, do you want to make the tapping point and then you pass to Thomas, okay? Thank you.
No, Thomas, go ahead. I think the questions are much more about the
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Okay, so maybe I'll try to be quick. I know we're one of the industries. We're coming out with kind of great question. We're coming out with if you want, with a view of this, an empirical view based on surveys. But I think it's clear that if you look at retail, finance in particular, they are the ones that are moving a lot quicker. It's actually interesting that energy as well is pretty much up there. So we've got a good bunch of industries up there. Transportation and logistics, not quite as high as I would have expected. Manufacturing actually is quite a way back. So that's the indication from our surveys. Now, keeping in mind that depending on who you speak to and where in manufacturing, it varies, right? Because AI has been around there for a long, long time.
Yes.
All right, so that's it. Large versus SMBs. It'll start with large businesses because they'll see a lot more of the benefits there as well. I think SMBs will buy, depending on what size, medium-sized business you cut off, they'll buy packages and see how they can apply it to them. I think that's a quick answer. Then procurement, you've got to have someone in place to actually help organize it. So whether you choose a center of excellence or a chief AI officer or it's the CIO that does it, but you need someone to sit above it and actually hold on to the budgets there as well, and then coordinate the procurement of that. So that's very quick. And that somewhat relates to the other question as well around, so what do we see going forward? Now, it's completely clear it's going to have a massive impact on jobs. I talked to one CISO from Benson Legal Company. The lawyers love using Gen AI, and they love putting their statements together using Gen AI. Now, but that's really dangerous because you need to check the accuracy. So there are actually other process steps that are happening now to make sure this actually works. It'll be a longer journey, I think, than we expect. Not quite as big, but I completely agree with all your points. We need a legal framework. It's going to affect the human. For companies, this is a big change management exercise, as I mentioned before.
Okay. So that's okay. Let's go to a final set of questions. We have here with us Ana Neves, that has some responsibility in terms of digital and IT in Portugal and in Europe. Ana, do you want to make some comments or question to Gabriel or to Thomas, please? Okay.
Yes, of course. Thank
It's a
you for
pleasure
this
to have you
opportunity.
with us. Okay, you are a very experienced person in IT and digital. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. So, Thomas, thank you very much for your input and the overlook that you presented here today. And there is a question that I would like to ask you. How do you see the governance of artificial intelligence in the future? In the future, I mean, in the short and medium terms. Thank you.
Okay, this is the question you have. Very, very specific and very question. Okay, we
But
have
very
also
large.
yes, and it's a very important
Very
question.
broad, yes.
Idalesi Lorenz, you are also someone expert in you were a former journalist of digital and IDC. Do you want to make some topics or some questions, please? Idalesi, I don't know if you are listening to us. Okay, I think we have some problems with communication. Susana Corver, you are also very interested in these topics of innovation, the information. Do you want to make some questions or topics, please?
Thank you, but I'm not in the best place to do questions
No
now.
problem.
I'm
We
just a
are
listener.
in the globalized world, right, Thomas? So everyone speaks in the globalized world. Please, Susanna.
Yeah,
Yes.
but the same question as Anna. I was very curious about the topic on governance, on who will lead, because I've actually seen the report also last week about the World Economic Forum, and what prevents companies to adopt AI is the lack of knowledge, the lack of people in companies that know. So companies will need to attract people that know how to talk about artificial intelligence. But who do you think that is leading the change within the companies, and sometimes bridging the gap between the most senior levels of decision that are not that aware of the opportunities, not only increasing the power in the people in the company, but also the opportunities that artificial intelligence can bring to the companies. I was curious when you said that Beiersdorf said that they won't be using or investing in AI for the next year, and maybe it's also because of those challenges within the companies.
Very interesting.
Thank you, Jaime.
Always very interesting. We have you always Rita Vadão is very expert on the questions of legal and also digital. Rita, you are here with us, I think, for the first time. Do you want to make some comments, some questions, please? I don't know if you are hearing. Okay.
Yes, I'm here.
Yes,
Hello.
and if you want to
time.
make some comments, some questions, it's a pleasure. Okay, please.
It's the first time that I am here. It's very interesting.
Yes, of course.
It's very interesting
yes.
to hear you. I am in the legal world, so it's not so easy for me to follow you, but it's interesting because I have just a new consultant agency for communication in the digital world, and it's very interesting to hear you about this. I am beginning to follow this world, and in the AI world mainly. And what I can see, it's that following your not your I don't know the word, your concepts and your all your all you have spoken, law and in artificial intelligence are very close to each other, and not just that, but startups in Portugal and unicorns are another way that in Portugal are very developed. And right now, with our communication consult agency, we have discovered that in Portugal, all the agencies that could help financing these startups and all that could improve developing this world and this sector are not helping them. And it's very interesting because the world and Europe is much more developed than in Portugal, I think. But otherwise, all the sector with people and with the professionals are much more interesting and much more wise than the institutional companies that could help them and the government. I don't know if I am saying something that it's true, or if this is the issue, or if this is not real.
Okay. Thank you very much. I think it was a very interesting topic, Rita. And
I don't know if it is or not. It's just something that
yes, of course. But I think it's a very interesting topic for discussion and for Thomas and Gabriel saying something. And then we will try to conclude because we are already 30 minutes after 6, sorry. And I think it's the time. Thomas, it's a word, and then we go to Gabriel to conclude the session, okay? Thank you very much, Rita, for your speak, okay?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rita. Yeah, from my side as well. And thanks, Jan. Rita, I think it's a good observation. I think we see this disconnect somewhere. I'm not sure that, and I don't know, as you're on side, whether Portugal is behind that. It wasn't my impression. But yeah, very interesting comment from your side. Susanne, just to be clear, I mean, Biostar is still investing in AI, but aligned with other IT investments rather than potentially breaking other things out. So I just want to make that clear. And also, please try to not, because this was a private conversation, so it would be good.
Yes, it's a private conversation.
Confidential as well, but just to make sure that that's aligned. And then in terms of leading the change, as I said, you do need someone in place. A lot of companies have just gone, oh, you seem to have a data title. Why don't you do the AI thing? Or they go, well, we pick someone from business or we pick someone from IT. But you really need to do that all together to figure out, not just your best business case and where it makes sense to invest, but also, Anna, coming back to governance, you also need a body to look at the governance, not just at what the AI does, but is it, can you make sure it's all sourced and correctly sourced and is working correctly and is continually being trained, but also in terms of the people and how they use it and what they use. And then the question around governance is also, okay, so can you actually train those people? You need a training plan for those for teams to actually understand how and what to use. And from a corporate perspective, we've got this model that basically says, okay, here are all the different aspects that you need to consider, from data to the platform to the people to what have you. I'm very happy to share that as well. But that's a good template to look at in terms of governance. And we've got some great documents on that as well, which we can share.
Okay. Gabriel, do you want to make some comments? Thomas, I don't know if you want to comment on Susanna. She also makes some topic. I don't know if you...
I did. I sort of went Rita, Susanna, and then Anna. So hopefully I covered, Susanna, what you mentioned.
Yes, of course.
Not extensively, but hopefully as a starting point. Happy to catch up.
Okay. We are already 20 minutes after 6, so almost 1 hour and a half. I think it's okay. Gabriel, do you want to make some comments to conclude our fantastic session?
Yeah, no, I can just 2 notes and then just to close. Yeah, one aspect regarding the governance, and we have a lot of research around that, and we can then share. But the challenge, I think, for the Portuguese companies is really when we analyze the maturity, the digital maturity of the Portuguese companies, one of the areas where we are not mature at all is in the data part. So managing data, information, and creating value with the data. So this will be critical for organizations to move forward with AI. and that's where I see the biggest challenge for the Portuguese organizations, not only Portuguese, but as I follow close our organizations, that's where I see the biggest challenge. And of course, the governance will be it is the same as we have new technologies, but you have to have the same principles of governance. But we will share some research around that, especially because we have a lot of regulation around it in Europe, and it will be, of course, key for European organizations to move forward with this, not only European, but especially for us. And just to finish, saying that today we just shared the quick overview of our predictions. We are going to share in detail on February 13 in Centro Cultural de Belém. So we have many analysts that will go deep into some of these topics, and we have, of course, also other speakers coming from IT players, from large organizations, decision makers that are really leading the change and the transformation with AI here in Portugal. So we very interesting to hear and to share experiences with them. So I will share the invitation in our WhatsApp group. And of course, as always, I'm available and we'll do the bridge with Tom and with our analysts if someone needs any more detail about any one of the topics we shared today.
Thank you very much.
To finish, thank you, Jaime, for organizing these smart discussions. It's always good to get smarter listening and from
Thomas, we have almost 1,000 people in our group, but of course, due to the agenda and to the timetable, it was not possible to have everyone. I think most of the people that were not here will be on the 13th of February. But special, I'd like to say something that is very important. I think that the work that IDC, either in Europe with Thomas and Phil Carter and every people, and with Gabriel and his father, Josh Beamer, has been done, is something very important. If we have here in Portugal today, 25 years after a digital public agenda, something very important is also due to entities like IDC. And I think it's an honor for us, people that are involved in public, in private. Everyone has its time to have someone that IDC that is involved in the innovation, in modernization, and it's very, very, very keen on the future. And it was a very good idea to have this conversation we had last year. Okay, thank you very much, Thomas, for your time. I know that you have a lot of very complicated agenda today and in the future. Thank you very much, Gabriel. You have now a very more complicated agenda with more responsibility in Europe. But I think it was very interesting. We put some topics that we will go on discussing in the group, and on the 13th we'll be in the Centro Cultural de Belém. It will be a pleasure, okay? Thank you very much. Have a nice year, and we'll be in touch, okay? Thank you very much, Thomas.
Thank you very much,
everyone.
Have a good evening.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.